Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. I'm Mickey Feldman-Simon. I am the founder of I'm Back at Work, and I'm excited to have Ingrid Goldbloom Bloch here with us today. Today, we'll be talking about creating flexibility with a portfolio career. A little bit about me. My background is in HR, recruiting, business development, and marketing. And I took multiple career breaks throughout my career and always successfully returned to the workforce, whatever version of that may be, as we will be talking today. And I watched other women around me struggle with the return, and I founded I'm Back at Work to help these women. Apart from providing all the free resources on the website, I also coach women one-on-one, career coaching, and executive coaching. I hope you join us for other upcoming webinars or watch the webinars on demand. And before we start with the webinar, I want to make sure that you can navigate the webinar panel. So your panel, Ingrid, if you can just return to the presenter mode at the bottom. We somehow moved out of the presentation mode. That's all right. Yeah, just remember at the bottom. That's right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, and if we can move to the next slide. So your webinar panel may either look like the image on the right or the image on the left. So the webinar can open and close, and to open and close it, you just click on the orange arrow and it opens, expands the webinar panel or closes it. Now, if the webinar panel is obstructing the view of the presentation, you can just click at the top and then drag it out of the way so it's not obstructing the view of the presentation. In the last 5 minutes of the webinar, we will address any questions that you have. And to ask questions, just click on the gray questions bar and then type in your questions in the blue rectangle underneath. And now I am going to turn my video camera off so I'm not bothering you throughout the presentation, and I am going to pass it on to Ingrid. Thank you, Ingrid, for joining us here today.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me, Mickey, and welcome everybody from wherever you are. Thank you for spending your lunch with me. So before we get started, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself and my own portfolio career. So I work at the intersection of counseling, business, and creative thought. And I've found a way to blend my early corporate experience in advertising and marketing. I used to work with Fortune 500 companies. My passion for really helping people transform their lives, and my love of art. I use upcycled and recycled materials in new and surprising ways. And so now I work as a career counselor and coach. And because of my creative abilities, I'm really able to help people see patterns and possibilities in their lives and create new career options so they can make money doing something that they really enjoy. So I currently make money 3 ways. I have a one-on-one coaching practice where I do career advising and counseling. I speak on career development topics to different area universities, and I sell a few big pieces of art a year. And once in a while, I'll do a project for corporate outplacement or a university that's career related. So those are 4 different income streams, but it hasn't always been this way. So I've had a series of corporate jobs, and I've had to quit some jobs to follow a spouse. Some of you might have had to do that. I've stepped in and out of work based on the various ages of my kids. They're now 16 and 19. And so now I'm going into a new phase as I'm having to think about paying for college. But regardless of where I was work-wise, there were always underlying themes that really made me happy within my work and were the best parts of my job. And those themes were things like coaching others, helping motivate others, connecting people and resources. There was always this performer in me, so I love public speaking. I know many people hate it, but I love it. And creative thought. I never thought of myself as an artist because I can't paint or draw, but I love working with my hands, and I was always thinking of creative ways to do something differently. And so rather than try to fit into a box, I've created a work and a life that allows me to sort of draw upon all the things that I do best and I enjoy. And I've woven these elements together, which is why I'm presenting today, which is how you can do the same if you're interested. And I'll give you the pros and the cons of how to create a portfolio career. So I'm going to turn off my video so you can focus on the presentation. You might want to grab a pad of paper and a pen, because I will be asking you a few prompt questions. But this webinar, as well as all of I'm Back at Work webinars, are available on the website for you to listen to later and go over and pause at your leisure in case you're having to multitask right now as you're listening. Okay. So I'm turning myself off. I turned off my microphone and we're ready to go. Sorry about that. So what we're going to be working on as we're looking at creating a portfolio career is, first of all, understanding how the world of work has changed. So I know there's a range of ages and women out there, different life stages, but the world of work has changed dramatically since I entered it. I'm 56 years old, so I've been through the prime of the 80s to the recession in the 2008, and so I've seen it all. And also, as the world of work has changed, so has your identity. Many people's identities have changed, and as you've stepped in and out of the workforce with kids, with different jobs, it does impact people's identity and how they feel. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to talk to you about the gig economy. So I'm going to be using the word the gig economy to explain to you a series of income earning gigs that you can weave together to create what I call a portfolio career. So I don't want anybody to be confused. Sometimes I'll be using the word the gig economy, and sometimes I'll be using the word portfolio career. But what I mean is it's a series of gigs or jobs that together create a portfolio. And finally, we'll look at the pros and cons, if this is even right for you. And then if you think it's something that you're interested in and would like to investigate a little bit further, I'll give you some action steps on how you can begin to build your own portfolio career. So you'll walk away from this webinar, which should go on for about 30 minutes, on how you can take those first action steps. Today is Thursday, and by Monday, you'll have already taken some steps. And then at the end, as Mickey pointed out, feel free to ask questions throughout, and then she'll be facilitating the question and answer period at the end. So how has the world of work changed? And the world of work has changed dramatically since before the 80s. So it used to be, and if you think about your parents, sort of employment for life. People would go to work, and the unofficial contract was, if I do a good job for you in exchange for my loyalty, you will give me job security. And people used to be able to stay with one career for 40 years. And as you all have watched, that's not true anymore. So in the 80s, there were a lot of corporate restructuring, offshoring, and a movement away from fixed costs. So when I say fixed costs, a lot of the time companies don't want to hold benefits anymore, and they want to be able to flex up or flex down depending on worker, their own demands of workers. So there's been a movement towards more contract work, not in all cases and not in all companies or fields, but there is a trend. And in fact, statistics are saying now that 35% of people are already working in the gig economy, and soon that's going to move up to 50%. And I'll address a little bit more about the whys later. So nowadays, it's very typical to see somebody go through 5 or 7 jobs and even complete careers. So I've gone from everything from my first job after college was working for the May Company department stores as an executive trainee. I moved to LA and I worked in management, and then as an assistant buyer and then a buyer. Then I moved to New York City and moved into sales. And from that, I moved into advertising, and I got that job because I had a lot of retail experience. And from advertising and marketing, I got married, moved to San Francisco from New York, had to leave that went through a life change, reevaluated my own career, went to a career counselor, and went through the process of deciding I wanted to get my master's in counseling. And so I reinvented myself into the career counseling field and have been doing that for over 20 years. So if you think back on your different careers, it's very normal and accepted now to have multiple careers. And because it's more accepted, there's a lot of different ways that people can work. Not everybody works like a Google where you're bringing your dog to work and flexible work hours, but it is much more acceptable to have work from home, contracts versus full-time. And the overarching theme that has changed is a term called career self-reliance. So rather than thinking of a company that is your parent that's going to take care of you in exchange for good behavior, you are your own company and you are leasing yourself out to other people, gigs, companies. You're leasing out your talents in exchange for money. And you have to remember that it's a business transaction. So really, how can you develop your own career self-reliance so you're not dependent on one company? And one way to do that is through creating a portfolio career, which allows for you to have multiple income streams. So you can flex up and flex down depending on your own needs. So this brings me to the gig economy. And what is the gig economy? And the gig economy is that space between full-time employment and entrepreneurship. And in that space, there are tons of opportunities for you to have a series of gigs, whether you're working for somebody else or you're freelancing or you have your own company, that together combined make up your job. So the question often is, well, what's the difference of a gig versus entrepreneurship? And usually when you're working in the gig economy, it's some kind of service for others. So you're doing event planning, you're doing tutoring, you're doing graphic design, career counseling, accounting work, marketing, versus that you're selling and creating a product. And once you start creating a product and building out a team, you've moved into entrepreneurship. But in many ways, it's semantics. So what I'm talking about is where can you create a portfolio of gigs where you're lending your talents, and each one is independent of the other, and each one provides you some sort of income. Some start out for free while you're building it, and we can talk how you can do that. So if you look at the gig economy, there's a lot of modes of working. So there's not only just one option, and I'd like to walk you through sort of 4 ways you can look at the gig economy. And the first way is that you have the same title that you did before. You're working for a company, but the movement has moved into contract work. So you might be a project manager, but you're now considered a contractor. It might be a long-term contract, but you can flex up and down as needed, as can the company. So it might be a 3-month contract, or it might be you'll work for us until we don't need you, and you will work for them until you don't need them. So it's the same job, same title, but your relationship with the company has shifted. So you're more like an outside consultant. The next one is to work for some sort of gig platform. And in a few slides, I'm going to walk you through a bunch of different gig platforms and how you can find your own. But what the platform does is it will connect contractors, and in this case, you, to clients. So you do not have to do any of your own marketing or business development or sales cycle. You simply would sign up with one of these platforms, create a profile similar to a LinkedIn profile, and the platform itself, through artificial intelligence or the coding, I'm not a coder, will help people find experts. So for example, if you're a graphic designer and somebody needs a graphic design job, they'll log on, they'll get the profile of all the different graphic designers. They can look on your profile, read your bio, see what kind of work you do. Maybe there's a link to your portfolio. And it's a great way to get into the gig economy without having to worry about starting a whole website or doing your own branding and marketing. You can just simply be on one of these platforms with a bio. The next one is thinking about freelance. So you're providing a service. So you might be doing math tutoring, dog walking, cake decorating, babysitting, accounting. I provide a service, career advising. Mickey does career coaching, executive coaching, human resource consulting. So think about a service that you might be providing. And then the final is really thinking about everything working together as a combination. So you don't have to just be on a platform or just have freelance. You can put together all three of these. So one way I look at this is if you're going shopping, there's a mall and there might be that anchor tenant, like a Nordstrom's. It's the big store that anchors the mall, and then there's all the small little stores around. So you could have an anchor tenant, which is your contract job, and then a gig or two on your platform, and then you do some freelance work. So right now, at times I'll have an anchor tenant, which will be a contract with an outplacement firm, helping people transition if they've been laid off. And let's just say that might be 2 days a week. And I know that I can guarantee that money for 3 months. And then I will see one-on-one career clients. And maybe during those times, I'll see 6 a week. And then I'll give a talk once a month. And then when I can, I'll get down to my art studio and work on something that might get sold once a year. So that's the way I've done a combination within creating a portfolio career. So here are the pros of having a portfolio career. On one hand, there's a lot of freedom and flexibility. So depending on what's going on in my life, I will flex up or flex down depending on how much time I want. So when I had young children, I would just say my career counseling practice is full, or I'm not taking on new clients right now. Behind the scenes, it meant that I was sleep deprived and had 1 client a month because I just couldn't handle it. But I would flex up and flex down based on my needs. Now I'm trying to bring on an anchor tenant because I need more income to pay for college. But one of the nice things is you don't have a boss. You can be your own boss and take vacation when you want. And the pro of that is flexibility. The con of that is you might, if you don't have good boundaries, you might be working all the time. The other pro is many people, I would say all people, are not one-dimensional. We have all kinds of interests and aspects to ourselves. And it's hard for one job to feed all of it. Similar to friends, we have different friends for different needs. And it's rare to have one friend that meets everything, sort of your fun, funny friend and your deep connection friend and your friend to go dancing with and your friend to cry with. We have those different friends. And I like to look at these different gigs within your portfolio as different jobs that meet different needs and address your different skills and interests. The other pro is by being in the gig economy and having a portfolio career, you really have a wide network of people in your life. And so if there's ever a time that you need to step back into full-time employment, it's much easier because you've been networking all along in a very unofficial way. So you probably will have many more contacts than if you just worked for one person. The con of this, however, is mindset. So you have to be willing to say, look, I work for myself and I have complete career self-reliance, and my identity is not connected to the title of where I work. My identity is what I'm creating for myself. The other is it does take a bit of organization. That being said, I would say I'm not that organized as a person. It's probably one of my weaknesses, and I've still been able to do it. It just causes me a lot of stress at tax time when I'm searching through too many documents. The other is benefits. So you are paying for your own benefits. So unless you have a partner that has good benefits at a regular full-time job with benefits, you need to consider that. And as I just mentioned, taxes, as a sole practitioner, my taxes were high this year. And it's not always as easy to do taxes because you have multiple 1099s or W-2s that you're going through depending on if you're doing consulting gigs or working for yourself. So being willing to look at sort of the tax implications and the trade-offs between time versus money, flexibility versus security. So there's ways to learn more about this, but I just want to give you a quick overview. The other thing, and I just read an article this last week, is there's a lot of glamour around having a portfolio career because it is really all about flexibility and creating your own stability by having multiple income streams, so you're not dependent on just one. But the flip side of that is, one is it's an empowered choice, and the other is some people are having to take side gigs or multiple gigs because they just can't pay their bills. And there's a bigger discussion out there about, are people being compensated fairly? So teachers that are also having to bartend, or somebody who works full-time who's also having to be an Uber driver. So I'm trying to speak about creating a portfolio career from a position of choice and strength versus necessity. And some of you might be on one end of the spectrum, some of you might be on the other, and it doesn't mean that you can't have a little of both. So it's just another option, though, than just simply trying to get a full-time job. So let's say you decide that you do want to work in the gig economy. How do you go about creating your own portfolio career? First thing to do would be to identify your skills, values, and natural gifts. And this is, I think, sometimes the hardest part for people. And the reason is people say, well, I don't know what I'm good at, or I don't know what comes naturally, or I just don't know what I have to offer somebody else. And especially for women, I find this, women who've been out of the workforce and feel that they've lost some of their market value. A good place to start is, how do you spend your time? What comes naturally to you? What do your friends compliment you on? In the past, when you worked, what kind of feedback did you get from your supervisors? What were your old performance evaluations like? Even if it's 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the things that you were good at then that came naturally are probably still with you today. And you've probably also developed new skills. So for those of you who can instantly say, oh, I'm a great public speaker, or I'm really organized, I love organizing, or everybody comes to me with their problems, I'm a good listener or problem solver, or I love planning events, I'm really good at managing multiple things. You know, maybe that skill is project management. For those of you who know, I would just jot those down really quickly. Don't think about, well, how am I going to use that skill? Just start identifying it. For those of you who don't, and this is, I would say, the majority of the people, the issue is, how do you tap into what your natural skills are? The easiest thing to do would be to ask friends and family and former coworkers. And you could simply say to them, what do you think I'm good at? What do you think I do better than the average person? If I could go back to work tomorrow, what kinds of jobs could you see me doing and why? And it's really nice to get that kind of feedback. I've had clients just put together a short questionnaire with 3 to 5 questions and send it out and say, I'm just trying to gather some information about myself as I'm thinking about the next steps in my career. The other is going to some sort of career advisor, career counselor, coach that can help pull these out of you through a series of questions, as well as some career testing. A Myers-Briggs test is one way. And there's an old book that has been around for years, What Color's Your Parachute by Dick Bowles, which I still think is one of the best books out there. So some people learn best by talking, and some people just want to do some research on their own. But there's a lot of ways to help you do what I call a self-assessment, which is to identify your skills and sort of what comes naturally. So an example for myself is way back when I worked in advertising and marketing. I worked for Saatchi & Saatchi Advertising in New York City. And I did a lot, I was in account management, and my job was getting a lot of people to give me information so I could give it on to the client if I'm just stripping it down. There were also a lot of big events. So I had to juggle multiple inputs, get a lot of people to do things for me on time, and they didn't work for me. So I was really stressed out a lot of the time. I was good at my job. I was able to get people to do what I needed. I was able to meet my deadlines, but the project management was something that caused me a lot of stress. So I decided, oh, I don't want to do project management ever again. It's something I'm good at, but I don't want to do. But when I took a step back and I looked at, well, why was I good at it? What were the aspects of project management that I really enjoyed? I realized that it was the relationship building. The reason people were willing to give me things on time or when I asked is because I'd spend time getting to know them. I was very adaptable to people's work styles. I had a nice ability to build relationships. I also really enjoyed connecting people to resources and information. So I loved being that liaison and that bridge. I loved the external facing customer service, sort of public speaking abilities. And I loved coming up with creative solutions to try to streamline things. So when I think about those elements, it's relationship building, customer service, educating, speaking, and creative thought. Those were the elements that I wanted to bring forward, and I have been able to bring forward into my life. The next thing to do is case studies. Think about the people that you already know in your life. And most people already have about 12 people that are making money with more than just one job. They might call it a side hustle. They might call it a hobby. They might call it, oh, just something I do on Saturdays. But if you pay attention and start talking to people, find out what they're doing, they might not be making a lot of money right now, but what do you do? What else do you do? Is this the only way you're making money? You'll find within your inner circle that there's probably a lot of people already in the gig economy. It's like when you're doing something to if you own a home and you're suddenly getting a new roof, you suddenly pay attention to everybody else's roofs and you see all the roofs that have recently been done, but in your normal day in, day out, you wouldn't be noticing roofs. It's the same kind of thing. Just start noticing how people are putting together their careers. The other is looking at your own lifestyle. Can you set your life up to be able to support a gig career where there's times that you really need concentrated bursts of energy where you can focus? If you have young children, would you have childcare provided or covered that you could adjust up or down as needed? Does it work with your schedule? Does it work with your, as I mentioned earlier, your monetary needs? And then the other is to sort of get a lay of the land and start researching, as I mentioned, how to be in the gig economy. And one great way to start researching is to learn a little bit more about these gig platforms, even what they are and what exists in your area of interest. So there's general gig platforms and more specialized, and I'm going to have one slide for each. So the general gig platforms have all kinds of roles, and I've pulled out a few: Upwork, Fiverr, FlexJobs, Elance, Guru, LinkedIn ProFinder, and People Per Hour, but there are hundreds of gig platforms that you can look at and investigate. But if we're just looking at the ones that are on here right now, you can do a few things. So one thing that you can do is just go onto a search engine like Indeed, Monster, Career Builder, LinkedIn, any job board site that offers a job listing, and you could Craigslist, and you can simply look for contract work. So many of these sites will have a specific search setting for contract or part-time roles. But if they don't, you can simply include the word contract in your search. For example, contract accountant. And a couple things will happen. Certain gig platforms will pop up. And the other thing that will happen are jobs, companies that are looking for contract work will come up. So it's sort of a 2-for-1. And some of these general gig platforms that I've outlined, I'll just give you an overview of what they are, but I encourage you to just look at them and sort of see how they work, who's on them, what do their bios look like, is this a platform that makes sense to you, just to familiarize yourself with these gig platforms, especially if it's new. So Upwork and Fiverr really focus more on branding and marketing. There's a lot of graphic design, marketing, audio, programming, voiceovers, something to do with branding, marketing. Flex jobs are everything from entry-level administrative jobs all the way up to executives. So it's a nice, broad gig platform. Elance is more focused on IT and web development, mobile marketing, but there are also opportunities for operations and creative. Guru is a lot of sales enablement. So if you're in the sales enablement background, or you have a sales enablement background, that would be a good site to look at. And then there's things like LinkedIn Profile Finder, which actually charge you money to belong. And it's around $60 a month. And to me, before you jump into a monthly fee, I would really investigate the free platforms that are out there. I say they're free, but they make their money on taking a small percentage of your contract. So everything's done through the gig platform, you're paid through the platform, and then they get a percentage. And people per hour, which is the last one, is somebody needs work done, they put in a proposal, and there's a computer program, some kind of artificial intelligence, which will sort and match the person's proposal to people on the platform. And let's say it gives them 5 people that match the criteria, and then you bid and you write a proposal for the work. So each one works a little bit differently. The other is really the niche gig platforms. And what's really nice about these, there's fewer jobs, but it's way more targeted. So I just pulled a few, but as I mentioned before, if you type in contract accounting or part-time accountant, you could even go the backdoor method as if you were hiring part-time marketing, then it will give you other gig platforms. But here's some for you. Software is TopTool and Upstack, customer service. I'm not going to read them all to you. And as I mentioned, this will be live in a couple days on the website, and you can go back and look at this slide and see if there's any that relate to your field. So then how do you take action? So you've looked at portfolio careers, you've learned a little bit about the gig economy, you've researched some of these gig platforms, and you're thinking, yeah, I'm ready to take the plunge. I think this could be a nice way to create career freedom for myself. So I think the easiest thing is ask yourself what you're already giving away for free. Most of us give stuff away for free because you're the go-to person for something. Are you the best party planner? Are you the one that's really organized? Are you the one that always is a good listener and everybody comes crying about their relationship problems? Are you really good with math and you're always tutoring other people's kids? Are you the person who can solve IT problems? So think about what you're already giving away for free, and it's also a clue to what comes naturally to you. And think about how you could start monetizing that. And there's ways to turn that into a business. Maybe this becomes the piece of your portfolio that's your own freelance work. The other is you're going to need to start talking to people. And one thing that people get really hung up on, especially if you're not working in a specific role for a specific company, or your working identity has shifted from opting out of the workforce for a while, is being able to have a response to the word, what do you do? And it comes up every week all the time, right? You run into your neighbors, oh, what are you up to these days? You're on the train, and if you're sitting by somebody like me who's an extrovert, I'm always saying to people, oh, what do you do? Or you go to some networking event, what do you do? So the response to what do you do is not where do you work, and it's not what is your job title, but it's a way to respond about your overall interests and your overall competency in the market, right? I'm in the career development field. And the way you do this, and there's other webinars, it will take longer than my 2 cents, would be under webinars like crafting your elevator pitch, writing your 30-second elevator pitch, or how to write a great introduction. And Mickey Fieldman has wonderful other webinars on this exact topic, which is how to write an elevator pitch. So I strongly encourage you to work on that. I'll give you a few tips, but for now, just know that it's something that you might want to work on. And then you get out there and you gather ideas, new inputs, and leads. And what I mean by that is that you are getting out of your head and talking to people. Many people will sit in their head and say, I can't do this because of this, or you've told yourself a complete story before you've even tested the waters. And I think that there's a way to just start talking to people where you don't have that job title, and simply something like, I have a background in education and I'm currently trying to find a way to continue to combine my love of animals and experience helping kids on the spectrum. I have a client right now, and this is her. She used to be an education consultant. She worked with the schools and kids with autism to help families advocate for services. And she doesn't want to do it anymore. And when we sat down, I said, what do you like? She said, I love the advocacy work. I love helping connect people to resources, and I love animals. And by the way, I love camp. My kids just go to camp every summer, and my husband and I have gone to camp, and I love camp. And so we started brainstorming about what are the different ways that she could take her love of animals, camps, and consulting. And one thing she's thought about is, okay, could I be a camp consultant? Could I help people that have special needs kids find camps that are a good match for their family? And then she thought, I wonder if there's camps out there that use therapy animals to help with the kids. And then she thought, I wonder how parents currently find those camps. And I wonder if the therapy camps with the animals have a marketing person and how they find parents. So she's out there just learning. How are people finding camps? What are the camps that are out there? She hasn't gone to the next level on if she's going to create a business, if there's a place for her, if she wants to do it. She's just following her interests. So all you need to do right now is think about just a very simple thing of, I'm trying to meet more people who are working for themselves and have an education background, or I'm really trying to find a way to combine my public speaking with my love for recycled art. And when you just put it out there to the universe, to people, you gather new inputs and leads, and you're out there, and new thoughts come your way that you wouldn't have thought of for yourself. So the other piece is to really set an achievable first goal. And so, as I mentioned, you're going to be out there generating new inputs, right? I'm thinking of creative ways to utilize my background working in development for nonprofits. I'm a strong project manager and writer, and could imagine lending my support to donor-related events or grant writing. So this person took a 30-second commercial, worked a little bit with a coach, and came up with this. And then, where are they going to do this? So they've identified a few areas, and you can do this over the next couple of days. Are there networking groups in your field of interest? So if you're thinking of getting into event planning or event management, could you get on online and type up event planning meetups or event management professional development Boston, and just see what pops up? So one is going to professional development groups that are in your field of interest. So I go to career development groups, but also going to groups outside of your field, because other people need training on career development. Other companies, whether it's lawyers or IT professionals, are still going to need event planners for their company events. So just putting yourself out there. Sometimes it's as simple as going through those community education course catalogs and just picking a couple classes, one-night classes that interest you. You'll learn something, and you'll meet other people that have similar interests. And through these casual conversations, you never know what's going to happen. So I think it's really important to get out of your head and start talking to people. I do a lot of talking about using design thinking principles to build out your career, and the principle is a bias to action. Really, you can't think your way forward. You can't think up a new product and just put it out there. You have to test it out, test drive. You have to revise it, and the only way you're going to know is through talking to people and putting yourself out there. The other is also realizing that you really don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all your ducks in a row. You don't have to have a website and a business card. You can just start talking. As you're putting the pieces together, remember that you are not just one thing. You do not have to define yourself as one thing. You're not just somebody's mother. You're not just an account executive. You're not just an accountant. You are a lovely mosaic of many things that together create you. Find support. Who are the other people that are thinking outside the box? If you're not a creative thinker, who are your friends that are? And say to them, help me brainstorm ideas where I'm combining my love of animals and my love of teaching. And you'll very quickly find support. Other female entrepreneurs, there's all kinds of free things on Eventbrite. If you look up what's happening on Eventbrite this weekend, the Cambridge Innovation Center has 4 buildings, and they have free events to the public. Every Thursday, there's something called the Venture Cafe, which are all kinds of entrepreneurs. It has free beer and wine, and it's every Thursday from 3 to 8. So finding support, getting yourself out there, and really avoiding perfection. I think a lot of people feel that they can't put themselves out there until they know what they want to do and have it all polished. But you can't, it's sort of chicken and an egg. It's hard to know what you want to do if you haven't started talking to people. So when I was starting my career as a career counselor and coach, had moved here from San Francisco. I went to a professional development meeting, and I looked around and I thought, wow, these are not my people. Sorry about that. And but there was one person that I really connected with, and I reached out to her and said, can I take you out for lunch and pick your brain? I didn't have a business card. I didn't have a business plan. I didn't even have a lay of the land of how career development worked in Boston. I moved from San Francisco. To this day, 20 years later, she's one of my best business friends. She sent me so much business over the years. She's been a confidant when I've had problems with career development people, clients of my own. She's just about to retire, and now we're talking about what's next for her. So sometimes just getting out of your own way to have that first conversation could lead to a long-lasting friendship. And that is how you can think about creating a portfolio career.
Ingrid, thank you so much for all that amazing information. I really think that that was insightful and helpful on all different levels, from thinking about where to start to what it is that you can provide to other people. So I have some thank yous in the questions, but if anybody actually has a question they would like to share with us, this is the time to ask your questions. I also want to invite everybody to join the Women's Only Facebook group. If you go to Facebook and type in I'm Back at Work, there's a page, there's also a group. And in the group, we provide support for one another. I also provide different tips, and if I hear of different job opportunities, so please feel free to join us there. I'm going to give it another moment for people to ask questions. And by the way, the webinar will be available, the recording will be available in about half an hour already. You will receive a link for it afterwards in your inbox as well. So you will be able to watch it slower, pause it if you want to look at all the those different sites that Ingrid mentioned. And Ingrid, we're getting more thank yous and so inspiring. So just so you know.
Good.
And I think that apart from the thank yous, I think you provided so much information that people need to probably just take it in and follow through. There's a couple of webinars on telling your story and your elevator pitch. So once you work through that, feel free to join those as well. And I think this is all for today. So thank you everybody for joining us, and I hope you'll join us again soon. Thank you, Ingrid.
Thank you so much. And if anybody comes up with a question after this has settled, feel free to reach out to me. I have a website that you can reach me at, or feel free to just write to me, Ingrid@mosaiccareers.com.
So I see one other question. Jennifer, how do you find my elevator pitch suggestions? Just go back on the website on I'mBackAtWork.com. You have the information here, and it's one of the free webinars that are up there. You can probably find some, if you do just a search on the website, it will come up in some other blogs that I've written as well. So just on the website. Okay, so thank you everybody, and see you next time.
Thank you for having me. Have a lovely rest of the day.